This is music, and this is Collecting in Style. So, as those of you who've been watching my channel since the beginning, which is not that long, as you will know, I kind of have a weakness for blind buys. Thinking of it, I think maybe not the majority, but a considerable portion of my collection of physical music media, they were blind buys. And I've been thinking lately, like, why do I have a problem? Right? Do I have a blind buy problem? And I've come to the conclusion that I do not have a blind buy problem because I do make sure that 9 out of 10 blind buys I make are fairly priced. They are what I consider to be cheap, first of all. And secondly, I am careful with blind buying vinyls because they're typically more expensive than CDs, for example. So I am careful with that. I do occasionally, as you know, if you've seen my channel, I do occasionally buy a couple of blind buy vinyls. When that's the case, they are typically very cheap. Now, people say be careful with blind buying vinyls because they're so expensive, and if you get them cheap, that's typically because they are not in super great condition. But I can kind of turn it around. Well, they're not in super great condition, so it's okay that they're cheap, right? And if I pick a blind buy up and I really like it and I would like a better copy, I'm probably gonna go and pick up a replacement or upgrade copy. So I realized I don't think I have a blind buy problem because I make sure they're cheap for the most part. When they're not cheap, I will get to that, but I kind of have a system for sort of justifying, at least when they're not cheap, on the rare occasion that happens. But yeah, so I really like blind buy. So the first question I had to myself was, do I have a problem? And the answer is, I don't think so. The second question I have, I guess again, a question for myself is, so why? Why do I like blind buys so much? And I think the answer is pretty simple. I just like exploring new music. I just, the first time experience of listening to cool music, I like that. And again, because they are fairly priced, most of my blind buys, it's okay if it turns out to not be great music. I would say 9 times out of 10, that's probably even too little. Let's say 9.5 times out of 10, I always find something enjoyable about the music, CDs or vinyls or whatever that I blind buy. Sometimes the entire thing is just brilliant. Sometimes, half of it or some songs are good, or there's some great guitar solos on it. Maybe there's just 1 or 2 good songs, but that's fine too. Occasionally, there are some that are just irredeemable. But not enough. That's why I can't really join the 10 terrible albums hate train, because I don't have 10 terrible albums in my collection. I think maybe I have 5 or something that I think are terrible. So that's why I really just enjoy immersing myself in new music and listening to it. And I think it goes back to the fact that in the waning days of the CD, I know the CD is coming back now, and they're actually sort of, the price is going up a bit on CDs as well, it seems. But in the waning days of the CD, there were lots of record stores, because they didn't really have vinyls that much back then. But lots of kind of like music and DVD and electronics stores that had CDs that were really cheap. We're talking like sometimes less than £1 or €1, right? And they were not secondhand, they were, new. and they just had to get rid of them. So that's where I really started doing lots of blind buys. I had already sort of done that before, but when they got so cheap, and I just went nuts and had a great time. I listened to lots of great music. So that's why I just like exploring new music. Now I've sort of tried to come up with a system, like different categories of blind buying, that kind of just to help myself make sense of what the hell I'm doing with my blind buys. So so the first category is what I call the complete blind buy, where you go into it completely blind. You know nothing about the album or the release in question. Typically you will be drawn to it because of the cover artwork, but there could be something else about it, right? You're just curious, whatever. You don't know anything about it and you pick it up. I call that the complete blind buy. And I do a lot of those, mostly in the wild, and mostly in secondhand stores, or when there's a sale or something going on, when they're cheap. So I do those. I do complete blind buys. Then there's what I call the research-based blind buy, where if you've done a bit of research, at the very least you've looked into the genre, but you might also have read up on the band or something or whatever. So you've put in a bit of work, but you haven't heard the album or EP or whatever it is. And as I said, at the very least, the genre. So research-based blind buying. I do this also quite often, but I do this mostly when I buy online, because very often it's kind of hard to avoid in many cases, because in many web shops you will find that the album or whatever it is listed under a genre and a subgenre. So it might say death metal, thrash metal, speed metal, and sometimes you find that when you listen to it you go, that's not really death metal. So but that's the research-based blind buy, which I do very often when I buy online, or if I'm looking for some thrash metal for my collection, I'm looking for some more doom metal for my collection, then I will do that, right? Sort of look into what the genre is at the very least, and maybe also look into sort of the political message of the band. If you don't want to listen to something that represents a political ideology you don't agree with, I think that's fair enough, right? So that sort of thing, the genre, who the band, and so on and so forth. And the next category is the I don't have a great name for this category, but I've heard this band before blind buy, where you have heard some songs or maybe some entire albums by the band, but you have not heard this particular album itself, right? And typically I find when I do this, it's because I like the other releases by the band, and I see this in the wild or maybe on a web shop, and I go, hey, that's from this band, I like them, this one is cheap, I'm gonna pick it up, right? So that's the I know this band already blind buy. There's probably a better name for it. And the last type of blind buy that I operate with is the sneak peek blind buy, where you actually go in somewhere, Spotify, YouTube, or whatever, and you just listen to maybe a song from the album, or just I like just listening to a snippet of a song just to get an idea of what sort of music I'm dealing with. And I do this if it's slightly more expensive type of CD, or if it's a vinyl or something, and I'm curious about it, I'm thinking I might want to pick it up, but I should just check it out first, right? Or if I'm not certain completely, I have it says thrash metal maybe, but I have a suspicion that it might not be thrash metal, and then I'll just go and just give it a quick listen and pick it up if I like what I hear. So those are the sort of 4 types of blind buy that I operate with that kind of help me make sense of my own blind buying. So the um, complete blind buy, the research-based blind buy, the I know this band already blind buy, and the sneak a peek blind buy, or maybe the cheat blind buy, whatever you want to call it. And they sort of help me a lot, right? And I also think because I have these sort of categories in place, I kind of operate, put them into operation and so on and so forth. That's another reason why I don't think I have a blind buy problem. And I guess the last thing is that some people I've heard, not many people because the VC is very non-normative, but I have heard some people say that if you buy blind buys, you're not a real collector. But I think, who's to decide what a real collector is anyways. But anyways, that's just my thoughts on blind buying. Thanks for watching.